You're married into the Mu family. You must do your duty. These crushing words sealed Jiang Nuanwan's fate, as she was forced to marry a man rumored to be disfigured and cruel. Her own family sacrificed her to save her sister's engagement, treating her as nothing more than a pawn in their game of status and wealth. But what happens when the woman everyone underestimated transforms herself beyond recognition? When Nuanuan walks into that high society party in her stunning disguise, even her cold CEO husband can't take his eyes off her. The question is, will this transformation finally give her the power to stand up to those who mistreated her, or will it trap her in an even more dangerous game of love and deception? The elegantly appointed Jiang family living room felt suffocating as Nuanuan sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. The expensive furniture and polished surfaces reflected the family's obsession with appearances that Nuanuan had never quite managed to fulfill. Her mother paced before her, pearl necklace catching the afternoon light as she delivered the news that would shatter any remnants of Nuanuan's carefully preserved hopes. "It's been decided. You'll marry Mu Tingxiao next month," her mother announced, voice crisp and businesslike, as if discussing a minor household renovation rather than her daughter's entire future. "The Mu family has agreed to the arrangement, and the papers will be signed tomorrow." Nuanwan felt the blood drain from her face. "Mu Tingxiao? But mother, I've never even met him. And what people say is irrelevant," her mother cut in sharply. "What matters is that this marriage will secure your sister's engagement to the Chen family heir. They were reconsidering the match after hearing rumors about our financial difficulties." The pieces clicked together in Nuanuan's mind with sickening clarity. Her sister Wangqi's engagement to the Chen family's only son had been the Jiang family's crowning achievement, a perfect merger of bloodlines and business interests. The Chens owned half the real estate in the city, and now that prize was being threatened. Her mother's eyes softened slightly, not with compassion, but with calculation. "Your sister deserves better, so help her. This is your opportunity to finally contribute something of value to this family." The words cut deeper than any knife could. 24 years of being the afterthought, the spare child, the one whose accomplishments went unnoticed, while Wangqi's most minor achievements were celebrated with lavish parties. Nuanuan had graduated top of her class in business management, yet her father had scoffed at her request to join the family company, saying, "Pretty faces belong in the home, not the boardroom." That job had gone to a male cousin instead. "But I was planning to apply for that marketing position," Nuanuan said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've already prepared my portfolio and—" Her mother waved her hand dismissively. "That little hobby of yours? Forget it. This marriage is your real future now." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her designer dress. "The Mu family's wealth makes our fortune look like pocket change. Your sister's engagement is hanging by a thread, and your father's company needs the business connections the Mu family can provide." Nuanuan felt a tear slide down her cheek as the full weight of her situation pressed down on her chest. "But mother, the rumors about Mu Tingxiao, they say he's disfigured, cruel, a recluse?" Her mother's laugh was brittle. "Rich men always attract gossip from the jealous. What matters is his wealth and the Mu family name." From the doorway, Nuanuan's father cleared his throat. Tall and imposing in his tailored suit, he regarded his younger daughter with detached interest, as if assessing the value of a business acquisition rather than looking at his own child. "The arrangement benefits everyone, Nuanuan. The Mu family gains connections to our social circle, where they've been excluded despite their wealth. We secure your sister's future and gain a powerful business ally." His tone left no room for discussion. "Sometimes one must sacrifice for the greater good of the family." "Sacrifice?" Nuanuan stood shakily. "You're asking me to marry a complete stranger, a man people are terrified of. Liu Min from my university class worked as a maid at the Mu mansion for 1 week before quitting. She said the servants disappear if they look at him directly, and that he stays locked in the East Wing where no one is permitted to enter." Her father's expression hardened. "Enough with these childish superstitions. The contract is being finalized as we speak." "Contract?" Nuanuan echoed, her voice breaking. "Is that all I am to you? A business transaction?" The silence that followed was answer enough. A soft sound from the hallway drew Nuanuan's attention. Wang Qi stood there, resplendent in a pale pink designer dress, her perfect features arranged in an expression of practiced concern. Unlike Nuanuan's simple beauty, Wang Qi had been blessed with the kind of striking good looks that stopped conversations when she entered a room. "Nuanuan," she began, her voice honey-sweet with false sympathy. "I never meant for this to happen, if there was any other way." But there was no move to stand beside her sister, no offer to reject her own advantageous match in solidarity. Just empty words, as Wang Qi fingered the expensive diamond bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her Chen family fiancé. "You could speak up," Nuanuan suggested, a final plea directed at the sister she had defended from bullies as a child, the sister whose homework she had helped with, whose tears she had dried after every minor disappointment. Wang Qi's eyes flickered to their parents before she lowered her gaze. "We all have responsibilities to the family," she murmured, the practiced line sounding hollow in the tense room. Nuanuan's tears flowed freely now. "Please, there must be another solution. I've never asked for anything, but this..." She turned to her father, hands clasped in supplication. "Father, please!" His expression remained unmoved. "You're marrying into the Mu family. You must do your duty, just as every Jiang has done for generations." The family portrait hanging over the fireplace seemed to mock her now. The four of them posed in coordinated outfits, smiling as if they were the perfect family. Nuanuan had spent her life trying to earn her place in that portrait, to be worthy of the family name. Now she understood that her value had always been measured only in what she could provide them. "And if I refuse?" she whispered, though she already knew the answer. Her mother's smile turned frigid. "Then you are no longer a Jiang. No education, no inheritance, no family. Is that the life you want? Abandoned and penniless at 24? The trap was perfectly constructed, leaving no escape route. Nuanuan had been groomed to be dependent on her family, never allowed to build a career or support network of her own. Every friendship had been vetted, every aspiration channeled toward making her a suitable marriage prospect. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. She looked from face to face, her father's stern authority, her mother's cold calculation, her sister's guilty relief, and understood with crystal clarity that she stood completely alone. "When?" she asked finally, her voice hollow. "The ceremony will be in 3 weeks, her father replied, already reaching for his phone, eager to deliver the good news to his business partners. "The Mu family prefers privacy, so it will be a small affair. They've requested you move into the mansion immediately after signing the preliminary papers tomorrow. Tomorrow. Not even time to process, to prepare, to say goodbye to the life she'd known." "Will I meet him before the wedding?" Nuanuan asked, grasping at the smallest shred of dignity in this arrangement. Her mother's laugh was like breaking glass. "Don't be naive. Men like Mu Tingxiao don't waste time on courtship. Be grateful he's accepted the match at all. Now go pack your essential belongings." Dismissed like a servant, Nuanuan walked slowly toward the staircase, each step feeling like she was sinking deeper into quicksand. As she passed her sister, Wang Qi reached out briefly, squeezing her hand in a gesture too small and too late to offer any real comfort. Alone in her bedroom, Nuanuan stared at her reflection in the vanity mirror. Tomorrow, she would be handed over to a man rumored to be both physically and emotionally monstrous. A man who had agreed to marry her sight unseen, which told her everything about how this arrangement had been presented to him. A business merger, nothing more. In the mirror's reflection, whispers about Nuanuan's future husband filtered through the mansion walls like an invisible poison, gradually suffocating what little hope remained within her. The hushed conversations abruptly halted whenever she entered a room, replaced by averted gazes and uncomfortable silence. What terrified her most wasn't the rumors of Mu Tingxiao's scarred face. It was the peculiar way servants lowered their voices when speaking his name, as if the mere mention might summon him from the shadows. They say he once shattered a crystal decanter when an employee delivered disappointing news. Nuanuan overheard her cousin Mei whispering to the wedding coordinator in the hallway. The glass cut the poor man's face, but Mu Tingxiao simply watched him bleed, unmoved. Mei's voice dropped even lower. "He's a monster who keeps to the shadows. He breaks everything he touches." Nuanuan pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering in her chest. Each new rumor she collected painted a more horrifying picture than the last. Yesterday, it was the gardener, mentioning how Mu Tingxiao preferred his roses black, a special breed imported from some distant country where they symbolized death. Today, it was tales of his explosive temper that left staff trembling in his presence. The wedding preparations continued in a somber procession, utterly devoid of the joyful excitement that typically accompanied such occasions. When the seamstress arrived for Nuanuan's final fitting, the woman's hands trembled as she pinned the white silk that felt increasingly like a burial shroud. The woman wouldn't meet Nuanuan's eyes, her gaze fixed determinedly on the fabric, as if eye contact might somehow transfer the bride's apparent curse. "The bodice suits you well," the seamstress murmured, pins clenched between her lips. After a moment of hesitation, she added in a barely audible voice, "My niece worked briefly at the Mu estate last spring. She said he keeps the east wing locked at all times. No one is permitted entry, not even for cleaning." "Do you know why?" Nuanuan asked, desperate for any information about the man who would soon be her husband. The seamstress shook her head quickly, fear flashing across her features. "Some say it houses mementos from the women who came before you. Before me? The previous fiancés." The woman's hands stilled momentarily on the fabric. 3 engagements, all ended mysteriously before the wedding day. No one knows what became of them. A chill crawled up Nuanuan's spine, despite the warm spring air flowing through the open windows. She wanted to ask more, but her mother entered the room then, her critical gaze sweeping over the wedding dress. "Simpler than I would have chosen," her mother remarked coldly. "But perhaps it's for the best. No need to draw undue attention." She dismissed the seamstress with a wave of her hand and turned to Nuanuan with an expression that might have been intended as maternal concern, but registered only as clinical assessment. "I must prepare you for what's expected," she said, adjusting Nuanuan's posture with firm hands on her shoulders. "Don't look at him directly. It angers him. Don't speak unless spoken to, and never, under any circumstances, question his decisions." Nuanuan swallowed hard. "Mother, surely these rumors are exaggerated. No one could possibly." "This isn't about what you believe," her mother cut in sharply. "This is about survival. The Mu family operates by different rules than ours. Their power means they answer to no one." She paused, something like genuine worry briefly softening her features. "Just do as I say, and perhaps you'll fare better than those who came before you." That night, alone in her bedroom, Nuanuan paced the perimeter like a caged animal. The windows, though large and offering a view of the moonlit garden, suddenly seemed like taunting reminders of freedom soon to be surrendered. She contemplated escape, running away to start anew somewhere distant, but reality quickly crushed that fantasy. She had no money of her own, no friends outside her family's social circle, nowhere to go that her father's influence couldn't reach. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Without waiting for a response, Wonky slipped into the room, resplendent in a designer dress and the diamond necklace their parents had purchased for her upcoming engagement party. The stones caught the lamplight, creating a constellation of brilliance around her neck that seemed to mock Nuanuan's circumstances. "I thought I should check on you," Wonky said, perching delicately on the edge of Nuanuan's bed. "You've been so quiet these past days. What would you have me say?" Nuanuan replied, unable to fully mask the bitterness in her voice. Wonky sighed, adjusting her necklace with manicured fingers. "It won't be as terrible as you imagine. The Mu family estate is beautiful, I've heard, and you'll want for nothing material, except freedom, dignity, safety." Each word fell like a stone between them. "You're being dramatic," Wonky said with a dismissive wave. "Every marriage requires adjustment, and think of the good you're doing for our family. For me." She stood and approached Nuanuan, placing her hands on her sister's shoulders in an echo of their mother's earlier gesture. "I'll visit often, I promise. And who knows, perhaps the rumors about Mu Tingxiao are merely that, rumors." But the uncertainty in Wonky's eyes betrayed her true thoughts. She didn't believe her own reassurances any more than Nuanuan did. After Wonky left, Nuanuan returned to the vanity mirror, studying her reflection, as if searching for something she might have missed before, some hidden strength or secret knowledge that could protect her in the days to come. The woman who stared back appeared outwardly calm, but her eyes housed a storm of emotions: fear, anger, resignation, and beneath it all, a flicker of something harder and more resilient. In the silence of her room, Nuanuan made a decision, not an escape plan. She recognized the futility of physical flight, but a deeper, more fundamental choice. Whatever awaited her in Mu Tingxiao's shadowed world, she would not surrender her essential self to it. They could marry her body to this stranger, could lock her in a mansion of whispers and fear, but they could not claim her spirit, unless she allowed it. "I will not break," she whispered to her reflection. The words, both a promise and a prayer. No matter what he is, no matter what he does, I will remain Nuanuan. The wedding day dawned with a cruel radiance. Sunlight streaming through her windows as if mocking the darkness that awaited her. Servants bustled in to prepare her, their touches efficient but impersonal, their expressions carefully blank. No one congratulated her. No one wished her happiness. They adorned her like a sacrifice being prepared for an ancient ritual, their every movement touched with unspoken dread. As they arranged her hair and applied subtle makeup, Nuanuan steeled herself for the first meeting with the man everyone feared. She had formed a mental image of Mu Tingxiao based on the collected whispers, a scarred, towering figure with cold eyes and cruel hands. Yet some instinct told her that his physical appearance, whatever it might be, would not be the true threat. The real danger lay in the web of power and manipulation that surrounded him, the same forces that had ensnared her in this arrangement. As the crimson veil descended over her face, Nuanuan felt herself transforming from a person into a possession. Through the translucent fabric, the world took on a blood-red hue, symbolic of the sacrifice she had become. She stood motionless, adorned in elaborate wedding finery that felt more like armor than celebration attire, while attendants fussed around her, adjusting every fold and crease to perfection. Not once did they meet her eyes or acknowledge the human being beneath the ornate costume. The ceremonial hall echoed with measured footsteps and hushed conversations rather than joyful celebration. Nuanuan strained to see through her veil as she was guided forward by two attendants who held her elbows with firm grips, as if concerned she might flee at the last moment. Their caution wasn't entirely misplaced. The weight of the traditional headdress pressed down on her neck, a physical reminder of the burden she now carried for her family's advancement. Through the red silk barrier, Nuanuan could distinguish only vague shapes and shadows. The ceremony proceeded with mechanical precision, each ritual element executed flawlessly, but devoid of warmth. When she was finally positioned at the altar, she detected a tall figure standing several feet away, her husband, maintaining a deliberate distance, even in this moment, that should have united them. The space between them felt symbolic, a physical manifestation of the emotional chasm that would characterize their union. "The bride and groom will now bow to heaven and earth," announced the ceremonial master, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Nuanuan bent forward obediently, her body responding automatically to commands, while her mind remained detached, observing the scene, as if from a great distance. Though they performed the same actions, she and Mu Tingxiao moved like separate planets, locked in distinct orbits, never truly converging, despite sharing the same ceremonial space. Not once did his sleeve brush against hers. Not once did he make any gesture acknowledging her presence, beyond the minimum required by protocol. The guest's whispers reached her through the veil, a constant undercurrent beneath the solemn proceedings. "Such an unusual arrangement," one woman murmured to her companion. "He won't even stand beside her properly." Nuanuan felt dozens of eyes upon her, their gazes a mixture of morbid curiosity and thinly veiled pity. She straightened her spine, refusing to shrink beneath their scrutiny, though no one could see the determination hardening her features behind the red barrier. When the time came to sign the marriage certificate, Nuanuan experienced perhaps the most unusual aspect of this already strange ceremony. Rather than approaching herself, a slender man in an impeccable suit stepped forward, introducing himself as Mr. Lin, Mu Tingxiao's personal assistant. He efficiently handled the documentation, serving as an intermediary between bride and groom, who stood mere feet apart, yet might as well have been in different buildings. "If you would sign here, Mrs. Mu," Mr. Lin said, his voice professionally neutral as he presented the papers to her. The name, Mrs. Mu, sounded foreign to her ears, an identity she had not chosen and did not yet recognize as her own. Her hand moved automatically, signing away her independence with strokes of ink that seemed to flow too easily for such a momentous surrender. Through a brief parting in her veil, Nuanuan caught a glimpse of her new husband as he completed his signature. Mu Tingxiao wore thin leather gloves, despite the warm indoor temperature, and a high collar partially obscured his jawline. He kept his face angled away from onlookers, revealing only his profile, not scarred or monstrous as rumor suggested, but deliberately concealed nonetheless. The mystery of his appearance remained intact, feeding rather than dispelling the whispered legends of disfigurement. With the documents signed and official seals applied, Nuanuan had legally become Mrs. Mu Tingxiao. Yet nothing about the moment felt transformative or connecting. No rings were exchanged. No vows spoken directly to one another. The ceremonial master pronounced them married with the same emotion one might announce a successful business merger, which perhaps was more accurate than any romantic declaration would have been. Across the room, Nuanuan's parents beamed with unconcealed satisfaction. Her father accepted congratulations with practiced humility that barely masked his triumph, while her mother nodded graciously to the assembled elite of society, who now acknowledged the Jiang family as worthy connections. Their daughter's distress registered not at all on their radiant faces as they basked in the glow of their newly secured position. Even Wangqi, standing among the family members, wore an expression of relief rather than concern for her sister's well-being. As the ceremony concluded, servants appeared to guide the newly married couple toward the exit, where transportation awaited. Tingxiao moved first, his long strides carrying him forward without a backward glance. Nuanuan followed several paces behind, maintaining the distance he had established, no attendant suggesting she should walk beside him, as tradition typically dictated. The symbolism was clear to everyone watching. This was not a union of equals or even of companions, but a contractual arrangement with clearly defined boundaries. The journey to the Mu family mansion passed in complete silence. Nuanuan sat alone in the second of 3 black vehicles, separated from both her family and her new husband. Through the window, she watched familiar streets give way to increasingly exclusive neighborhoods, until they passed through ornate gates that closed behind them with finality. The mansion rose before her, an architectural masterpiece of modern design integrated with traditional elements. Beautiful, but forbidding, much like the man who owned it. An elderly housekeeper greeted her at the entrance with a formal bow. "Welcome, Mrs. Mu. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters." Nuanuan walked through marble hallways adorned with museum-quality artwork, noting the clinical perfection of every space, immaculate but unlived in, designed to impress rather than comfort. The housekeeper maintained a stream of practical information about meal schedules and household procedures, but Nuanuan detected the careful omission of any mention of Mu Tingxiao's routines, or when she might expect to see him. "These will be your private rooms," the housekeeper said, opening double doors to reveal a suite larger than the entire upper floor of her family home. "Everything has been prepared according to the master's specifications. Your belongings arrived yesterday and have been arranged accordingly." Nuanuan stepped into the space, elegantly appointed in neutral tones, with tasteful furnishings that conveyed luxury without personality. Nothing about the rooms indicated they had been designed with her preferences in mind. They could have housed any woman who happened to bear the title of Mu Tingxiao's wife. "The master prefers his privacy and will not be disturbing you," the housekeeper added, her tone suggesting this information should be received as a relief rather than the rejection it represented. "If you require anything, simply use the house phone. Someone will attend to your needs immediately." With a respectful bow, the woman withdrew, leaving Nuanuan truly alone for the first time since dawn. The silence enveloped her, broken only by the soft ticking of an antique clock, counting seconds in her new life. With trembling fingers, she finally reached up to remove the veil that had separated her from the world throughout the day. The heavy silk fell away, and she drew her first unrestricted breath in hours. Nuanuan moved to the full-length mirror, occupying one wall, studying her reflection. A stranger dressed as a bride, adorned with jewels and wrapped in expensive fabrics, yet fundamentally unchanged beneath the trappings. She began methodically removing the elaborate hairpins and ornaments, each piece representing an expectation, a constraint, a symbol of the transaction that had brought her here. The mansion's immaculate gardens, like everything in the Mu estate, projected perfection while concealing darker truths beneath the surface. When Mujiachin approached Nuanuan that afternoon, his arrogant smile suggested he already knew how this encounter would end. But for all his family's power and influence, he had fatally misjudged the woman standing before him. 3 weeks had passed since Nuanuan's arrival at the Mu mansion. 3 weeks of silence broken only by the occasional instructions from household staff. 3 weeks of meals eaten alone, of wandering through immense empty rooms, of existing as little more than a signature on legal documents. Her husband remained a shadow, glimpsed occasionally from a distance but never engaging directly with her. She had made peace with this arrangement. At least it spared her the cruelty she had been warned to expect. That afternoon, Nuanuan had found solace among the carefully cultivated chrysanthemums in the eastern garden. The blooms stood tall and dignified, despite being rigidly controlled, their growth directed by the gardener's precise hands. She found herself relating to these flowers, beautiful only when conforming to others' expectations. She was tracing the edge of a white petal when a voice sliced through her momentary peace. "So this is where my brother keeps his disappointing purchase." Nuanuan turned to find a man watching her with undisguised contempt. Though they had never met, she recognized Mu Jiachin from family photographs. Mu Tingxiao's younger brother, known throughout business circles for his charm, ruthlessness, and infamous reputation with women. His expression held none of the charm now, only disdain, as his eyes traveled over her with deliberate slowness. "Brother Jikan," she acknowledged with the proper deference, bowing slightly. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced." His laugh cut through the garden's tranquility. "Formal introductions seem unnecessary for the ugly bride, don't you think? Everyone knows why you're here, to secure your sister's future while providing my brother with the appearance of normalcy." He circled her slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. "Though I must say, even for a business arrangement, he could have secured someone more visually appealing." The garden seemed to contract around them as servants working nearby lowered their heads, pretending not to hear, while hanging on every word. Nuanuan remained silent, her years of conditioning to accept insults without response taking over. "You should be grateful," Mu Jiachin continued, stepping closer. "A woman like you, from a family like yours, married into the Mu household, my brother must have taken pity on you." His voice dropped to a mocking whisper. "Or perhaps he simply doesn't care what you look like, since he never intends to look at you at all." Each word landed like a precise cut, designed to draw blood without leaving visible wounds. Nuanuan had endured similar treatment throughout her life, from family members who considered her dispensable, from classmates who recognized her vulnerability, from a society that valued women primarily for their appearance and connections. She had always accepted these judgments with downcast eyes and silent dignity. But something was different now. Perhaps it was the weight of 3 weeks of isolation, or the culmination of years of being treated as less than. Something within Nuanuan, something long dormant, but never truly extinguished, began to stir. "Your silence confirms it," Mu Jiachin smirked, emboldened by her apparent submission. "You know your place. Perhaps that's why my brother selected you. You understand your role as a convenience, nothing more." He moved closer still, his expensive cologne overwhelming the garden's natural fragrance. "No woman has ever refused me, especially not one as fortunate as you to even be in this family. Perhaps I should help you understand just how grateful you should be." His hand reached toward her face, fingers extended to touch her cheek in a gesture of mock affection that barely concealed his true intent. His eyes held absolute certainty, the confidence of a man who had never faced consequences for his actions, who viewed women as possessions to be acquired or discarded at will. In that moment, something fundamental shifted within Nuanuan. The accumulated weight of a lifetime of belittlement, of being treated as disposable, of quiet acceptance, It all crystallized into a single point of perfect clarity. She saw Mujiachin not as an intimidating figure from a powerful family, but simply as another person who believed he could diminish her without repercussion. The sound came first, a sharp crack that echoed across the manicured lawn. Then came the stunned silence as every worker in the garden froze in place. Nuanuan's palm stung from the impact, but she felt no regret, only a strange, liberating calm. Mujiachin stood motionless, his hand suspended in the air where he had been reaching for her face. A vivid red handprint bloomed across his left cheek, the only imperfection on his carefully maintained appearance. His expression transformed from shock to disbelief to rage in rapid succession. "You!" he sputtered, his voice strangled by fury and humiliation. "Do you have any idea who I am? What I could do to you?" Nuanuan stood perfectly straight, her voice steady and clear in the garden silence. "You may be a Mu, but I will not be your victim." The words emerged with a strength that surprised even her. "Don't think everyone is as disgusting as you." His face contorted with fury, the handprint darkening as blood rushed to the surface. "You will regret this," he hissed, stepping toward her again, his hand raised. The servants watched, frozen between protocol and shock, as the scene unfolded. "I doubt that very much," Nuanun replied, standing her ground without flinching. Something in her steady gaze, perhaps the complete absence of fear, made Mujiachin hesitate. Before he could respond, a senior household manager appeared at the garden's entrance. His arrival so timely, it seemed almost orchestrated. "Mr. Jiakin, your scheduled call with the investors from Singapore is beginning in 5 minutes. The conference room has been prepared." The interruption fractured the moment. Mu Jiachin straightened his jacket with deliberate precision, his eyes never leaving Nuanuan's. "This isn't finished," he promised, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I believe it is," she responded, matching his tone. As Mu Jiachin stormed away, the garden remained suspended in shocked silence. The servants carefully avoided looking directly at Nuanuan, their movements stiff with uncertainty about how to process what they had witnessed. None of them had ever seen anyone, let alone a woman of lower status, stand up to any member of the Mu family. Nuanuan remained in place, her heart racing, but her exterior composed. She felt oddly light, as though she had shed an invisible weight she hadn't fully recognized she'd been carrying. For years, she had accepted the narrative others constructed about her, that she was less valuable, less worthy of respect, less deserving of agency. In a single moment, with a single action, she had begun to rewrite that story. Unknown to both Nuanuan and Mu Jiachin, another pair of eyes had witnessed the entire exchange. From his office window overlooking the garden, Mu Tingxiao stood motionless, his expression unreadable as he observed the confrontation. His eyes narrowed slightly at his brother's approach toward his wife, remained fixed as the slap echoed across the garden, and continued watching as Nuanuan stood her ground in its aftermath. Silent observers often hold the true power, and while Nuanuan had won the battle in the garden, she hadn't realized the most important eyes of all had been watching. The household staff moved through the Mu mansion with unusual tension that evening, their hushed whispers falling silent whenever Nuanuan passed. Word of her confrontation with Mu Jiachin had spread like wildfire, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation. No one in living memory had ever dared to stand against a Mu family member so openly, let alone a bride who had been essentially purchased to serve a purpose. The sun had barely set when a senior housekeeper appeared at Nuanuan's door, her expression carefully neutral. "The master requests your presence in his study immediately." The words hung in the air between them, neither a threat nor a reassurance. Nuanuan felt her heart quicken, but she nodded calmly, smoothing her simple dress with hands that betrayed only the slightest tremor. The walk to Mu Tingxiao's private study felt like traversing the distance between two worlds. With each step, Nuanuan steeled herself against whatever punishment awaited. The psychological weight of her position as a sacrificial bride crashed down upon her shoulders. She had been sold into this arrangement, treated as expendable, robbed of agency. but the memory of her palm connecting with Mu Jiaqin's cheek burned brighter than her fear. If standing up for herself meant facing consequences, then so be it. The massive wooden doors to the study loomed before her, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to whisper ancient warnings. The housekeeper knocked softly, before retreating, leaving Nuanuan alone, when a deep voice commanded, "Enter." Drawing a steadying breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside a room that pulsed with masculine power. The study was a testament to authority and control, dimly lit by a single desk lamp that cast more shadows than illumination. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their leather spines gleaming faintly in the low light. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, and behind it sat the silhouette of the man she had married, but never truly met. Mu Tingxiao remained partially obscured, his features dancing between light and darkness as he observed her entrance with unnerving stillness. "You wish to see me," Nuanuan stated, rather than asked, her voice steadier than she felt. She stood tall, shoulders back, refusing to cower despite the overwhelming power imbalance between them. This private study represented the heart of his control, and she had been summoned to it, like a subject before a king. Mu Tingxiao remained silent for a moment, studying her with an intensity that seemed to penetrate beyond her physical appearance. When he finally spoke, his voice carried none of the rage she had expected. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. The measured tone surprised her. It held authority without cruelty, command without malice. As Nuanuan took her seat, a shaft of light from the desk lamp briefly illuminated part of his face. She caught a glimpse not of the rumored disfigurement, but of sharp, aristocratic features, and piercing eyes that revealed nothing of his thoughts. "I understand there was an incident in the garden today, involving my brother," he continued, his fingers steepled before him. "I would like to hear your account." The request caught her off guard. She had prepared for accusations, not an opportunity to explain. Gathering her thoughts, Nuanuan recounted the confrontation without embellishment, describing Mu Jiaqin's insults and inappropriate advances with clinical precision. As she spoke, she watched Mu Tingxiao's expression, trying to decipher any reaction in the fragments of his face that became momentarily visible in the shifting light. Not once did he interrupt her. His silence was not the cold disregard she had come to expect, but something else entirely: attentive, evaluative. The experience of being truly listened to by someone in a position of power was foreign to Nuanuan, whose voice had been consistently dismissed by her own family. When she finished, the room fell into silence again. Mu Tingxiao leaned forward slightly, allowing the light to reveal more of his face. His eyes held a calculating intelligence that made Nuanuan understand how he had built his empire. "My brother has always had poor judgment about boundaries," he finally said, a statement that revealed the first hint of friction between the Mu siblings. The response was so unexpected that Nuanuan almost failed to mask her surprise. She had braced for defense of family, for anger at her audacity. Instead, his words suggested something closer to acknowledgement, perhaps even tacit approval of her actions. "Is there anything else you wish to tell me?" he asked, his gaze steady on hers. Nuanuan considered her position carefully. The dynamics between them were shifting in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. "No," she replied. "I have nothing to apologize for." A flicker of something, perhaps respect, crossed his features before the shadows reclaimed them. "Very well," he said with finality, returning his attention to the documents before him in clear dismissal. Nuanuan rose to leave, her mind racing to understand what had just transpired. This man bore little resemblance to the monster of rumors, yet his power and control were palpable in every aspect of their interaction. As she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "Mrs. Mu," he called, using her married title for the first time. "The Mu family does not tolerate disrespect from anyone." The ambiguous statement hung in the air between them. Was it a warning about her behavior, or an oblique reference to his brother's actions toward her? Nuanuan nodded once, unable to discern his true meaning, and left the study with her dignity intact, but her confusion multiplied. The following morning brought whispers of change. As Nuanuan took breakfast on her private terrace, she overheard two maids discussing recent developments in hushed, astonished tones just beyond the doorway. "Packed and gone before sunrise," one whispered urgently. "Mr. Jekin sent to oversee the European acquisitions, effective immediately. The driver said he wasn't happy about it. 3 months abroad at minimum," the other replied. "Never seen the master act so quickly. Usually takes weeks to arrange international transfers. You think it has something to do with yesterday's incident? What else? No one crosses a Mu without consequences." Just surprised it was the younger Mr. Mu who faced them this time. Nuanuan remained perfectly still, absorbing this revelation with careful neutrality, despite the triumph blooming inside her. Mu Jiaqin hadn't simply been reprimanded. He had been removed entirely, sent thousands of miles away within hours of their confrontation. The swiftness and decisiveness of the action revealed the true extent of Mu Tingxiao's power, and his surprising choice to use it in response to her treatment. Later that day, as Nuanuan walked through the mansion gardens, she noticed subtle changes in how the staff regarded her. The pity in their eyes had transformed into something resembling cautious respect. Her status within the household hierarchy had shifted, not because of her position as Mu Tingxiao's wife on paper, but because she had shown courage, and her husband had, in his own enigmatic way, supported her stand. The respect from the staff lasted precisely 4 weeks and 3 days, until the morning an elegant cream envelope arrived, bearing the Mu Corporation seal. The crisp envelope rested on a silver tray as the elderly housekeeper presented it to Nuanuan with an expression that mixed formality with unease. "The annual Mu Corporation gala invitation has arrived, Mrs. Mu," she said, her voice carefully neutral. As Nuanuan's fingers brushed against the heavyweight paper, the housekeeper hesitated before adding, "There is a personal note from Mr. Mu attached." Nuanuan slid the note from beneath the embossed invitation. 5 simple words were written in precise, strong handwriting. "Your presence is not required." The dismissive directive hung in the air between them, its meaning unmistakable. Mu Tingxiao would attend his company's most prestigious event alone, despite tradition. "Thank you," Nuanuan said quietly, maintaining her composure, though her cheeks burned with humiliation. She waited until the housekeeper departed, before allowing her shoulders to slump. Just when she thought she had gained some ground in this household, this reminder of her insignificance arrived with brutal efficiency. Later that afternoon, Nuanuan overheard 2 senior staff members discussing preparations for the gala as she passed the service corridor. Their voices dropped as they noticed her presence, but not before she caught fragments that pierced like splinters. "Never brings anyone," and 5th year alone, followed by "better for everyone this way." Curiosity overcame her pride. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into view. The staff members straightened immediately, their expressions guarded. "I couldn't help overhearing. Has Mr. Mu never attended company functions with a companion?" The older of the two, a woman who had served the Mu family for decades, glanced nervously at her colleague before responding. "It's not my place to discuss the master's personal affairs, Mrs. Mu. I understand. But as his wife, on paper at least, I believe I should know the customs I'm apparently breaking." Nuanuan infused her voice with the quiet strength that had served her since the garden confrontation. The woman sighed. "Mr. Mu has always attended company functions alone. Some say it's because he prefers to focus on business matters without distraction. Others believe," she trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "Others believe what?" Nuanuan pressed. "That he prefers to keep certain aspects of his life private from public scrutiny," the woman finished diplomatically. The implication was clear. Nuanuan wasn't being treated differently. She was simply the latest in a pattern of Mu Tingxiao's carefully maintained separation between his personal and professional worlds. Yet this knowledge provided little comfort. Being part of an established pattern of isolation didn't make her exclusion less painful. If anything, it confirmed her status as merely a contractual obligation to be acknowledged only when absolutely necessary. That evening, her phone rang with an incoming call from the Jiang residence. Nuanuan considered letting it go to voicemail, but experience had taught her that avoiding her mother only led to more forceful intrusions later. Nuanuan, her mother began without preamble, I've heard the Mu Corporation annual gala is next weekend. Have you selected your outfit yet? This is your opportunity to make connections that could benefit our family. Nuanuan's grip tightened on the phone. Of course, her mother would have informants tracking the social calendar of Beijing's elite. I won't be attending, Mother. Mu Tingxiao has made it clear my presence isn't welcome. The silence that followed was brief but charged. What do you mean you're not attending? Her mother's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. That's precisely why we arranged this marriage, to establish connections with the Mu family's circle. I have a note explicitly uninviting me. Nuanuan responded, the paper still sitting on her desk like a small white flag of surrender. Then, you've failed to make yourself valuable to him, her mother snapped. You're failing at the one thing we asked of you. What good is this marriage if you can't even be seen with him? Each word struck with practiced precision, finding the vulnerable spaces between Nuanuan's carefully constructed defenses. For all her mother's social machinations, she had always possessed a tactical brilliance for emotional warfare. Perhaps you should have considered that before selling me to a man who clearly wanted nothing more than a signature on a contract, Nuanuan retorted, surprising herself with the sharp edge in her voice. Don't be dramatic, her mother dismissed. Find a way to attend that gala. The Chen family will be there, and your sister's future father-in-law specifically asked if you would be in attendance. Do you want to embarrass us further? After ending the call, Nuanuan stood at her window, overlooking the immaculate gardens, where, just a month earlier, she had stood her ground against Mu Jiaqin. That moment had sparked something, a recognition of her own strength that had lain dormant beneath years of family conditioning. This dismissal threatened to extinguish that spark, reducing her once again to the dispensable daughter, useful only as a transaction. She caught her reflection in the window glass, the plain, unassuming appearance she had cultivated over years of trying to disappear within her family home. How long had she been hiding, not just from others, but from herself? A memory surfaced from her university days, laughter echoing in a basement theater as she transformed a classmate's appearance for their production of The Importance of Being Earnest. The drama professor had praised her extraordinary gift for transformation, noting how she could alter not just features, but presence with her skilled hands. You see people as they could be, not just as they are, the professor had told her. That's a rare talent. Nuanuan had forgotten that version of herself, the one who could create beauty and transformation, who understood the power of presentation. She had buried that talent, along with many others, when she accepted her role as the family sacrifice. She moved to her vanity, studying her reflection more critically now. The skills were rusty, but not forgotten. Contouring techniques, eye enhancement, the subtle art of highlighting features while downplaying others. With the right application, she could become someone else entirely, or perhaps more accurately, reveal the self she had hidden away. An idea began to form, dangerous, potentially humiliating, but also exhilarating in its audacity. If Mu Tingxiao didn't want his wife at the gala, perhaps he wouldn't object to the company of a beautiful stranger. The psychological impact of rejection had been meant to make her feel ashamed and undervalued, but instead, it was fueling a determination she hadn't felt in years. She opened her laptop and browsed high-end boutiques, searching for a dress that would announce her presence without a single word. Her personal allowance, the one area where Mu Tingxiao had been surprisingly generous, would finally serve a purpose beyond her basic needs. As she placed an order for an evening gown that cost more than she had ever spent on herself, Nuanuan felt a strange calm settle over her. This wasn't just about defying her husband or impressing her family. For perhaps the first time since she could remember, this was about choosing herself. 3 nights later, as darkness settled over the Mu estate, Nuanuan stood before her vanity mirror and confronted the woman she had allowed others to see for 25 years. The face staring back at her was pleasant, but forgettable, precisely as she had been trained to appear. But beneath that carefully constructed plainness lay another version of herself, one that had been waiting patiently for permission to emerge. With methodical precision, she arranged her transformation tools across the vanity's marble surface. Premium makeup products, still sealed in their packaging, formed a small army of potential. Hair extensions in her natural shade, but with a richness she'd denied herself, lay coiled like promises. The midnight blue gown hung on her wardrobe door, its silhouette both elegant and daring, in ways she'd never allowed herself to be. Nuanuan's fingers trembled slightly as she opened the first container, a high-end foundation that matched her skin tone perfectly. This wasn't merely about applying cosmetics, it was about reclaiming control of her own image. For years, she had deliberately muted her appearance, allowing herself to fade into the background of her sister's spotlight. Tonight would be different. She applied the foundation with careful strokes, building coverage that evened her complexion without masking it entirely. The woman looking back at her was already beginning to transform, not into someone else, but into herself, without the constraints of others' expectations. Each product she opened felt like breaking another small seal on the prison of perception that had confined her. The act of altering one's appearance can be a powerful tool for self-expression and empowerment, her drama professor had once explained during a theatrical makeup workshop. Those words returned to her now, as she reached for the contour palette. It allows individuals to present themselves in a way that aligns with their desired self-image. At the time, Nuanuan had excelled at transforming herself for various roles, never realizing she was simultaneously perfecting the art of her own disappearance in real life. With practiced hands, she began contouring her features, not to create an artificial face, but to enhance what already existed. The hollow beneath her cheekbones deepened slightly. Her jawline became more defined, and the bridge of her nose narrowed with subtle precision. These weren't drastic changes, but rather revelations of bone structure she'd always possessed, yet never highlighted. As she worked, memories surfaced of the countless times she'd been overlooked or dismissed. Her mother's perpetual disappointment whenever she entered a room. Her father's barely concealed preference for wonky. The way family friends would greet her sister with enthusiasm while offering her only perfunctory acknowledgments. With each brushstroke, she seemed to erase not just plainness, but years of quiet acquiescence to others' perceptions. The eyeshadow palette offered a spectrum of blues that complemented her gown. She selected the deepest shade for her crease, blending it outward with a precision that spoke of considerable skill. The middle tone swept across her lid, while the lightest shade illuminated the inner corners of her eyes. Already, her gaze appeared more intense, more commanding. Contouring, highlighting, and the strategic use of color can reshape facial features, enhance natural beauty, and create a more polished look, her professor had taught. The key is to use these techniques subtly, blending products seamlessly to create a natural-looking transformation that enhances rather than masks the individual's features. Nuanuan followed this guidance with the disciplined hand of someone who understood the power of perception. She applied false lashes that added dramatic sweep to her eyes without appearing artificial. With careful brushstrokes, she defined her brows, giving them a graceful arch that transformed her entire expression from accommodating to confident. A touch of highlighter on her cheekbones, the bridge of her nose, and her Cupid's bow brought dimension and light to her face. Nuanuan paused, studying the emerging woman in the mirror. She was halfway between her everyday self and something entirely new, or perhaps entirely authentic. This wasn't merely cosmetic enhancement, it was revelation. The face, taking shape before her, wasn't unrecognizable, but rather uncannily familiar, like meeting a version of herself from an alternate reality where she had never learned to minimize her presence. Her hair came next. She removed the simple elastic, holding her usual low ponytail, and began brushing through the straight black strands. With deft movements, she attached the extensions, blending them seamlessly with her natural hair. The added length and volume created a dramatic difference, transforming the severe simplicity she usually maintained into something luxurious and eye-catching. Working with practiced movements, she gathered the now abundant hair into an elegant updo, leaving strategic tendrils to frame her face. The style was sophisticated, yet effortless looking, creating height and drawing attention to her neck and jawline. She secured it with discreet pins, ensuring it would hold throughout the evening without appearing rigid or overly constructed. The lips were her final facial feature to address. She outlined them with precision, slightly enhancing their natural shape before filling them with a rich berry tone that complemented the midnight blue of her gown. The color was bold without being garish, commanding attention without shouting for it. Masks, in various cultures, hold significant symbolic meaning, often representing transformation, concealment, or the assumption of a different persona. Her professor had lectured once during a unit on theatrical props. Now, as Nuanuan lifted the delicate mask she'd specially ordered, those words resonated with new meaning. The partial mask, crafted of midnight blue lace and tiny crystals, would cover just enough of her face to create mystery, while emphasizing her now striking eyes. She set it aside temporarily and rose from the vanity to don her gown. The midnight blue fabric slipped over her head in a whisper of expensive silk, settling against her body like water. She'd deliberately ordered it a size smaller than she would have chosen in the past, embracing rather than hiding the curves she'd spent years concealing under modest, forgettable clothing. The woman in the full-length mirror was startling, not because she was unrecognizable, but because she was so completely herself. This wasn't a disguise in the traditional sense, but rather an unveiling. She turned slowly, absorbing the transformation from different angles. The gown's plunging back revealed skin that had never been exposed at social functions. The fitted silhouette accentuated a figure she had trained everyone, including herself, to ignore. Nuanuan secured the mask to her face, its delicate edges resting just below her cheekbones and curving elegantly over her brows. The effect was mesmerizing, revealing and concealing simultaneously. A partial disguise, such as a mask that covers only part of the face, can be particularly intriguing, her professor had explained, as it both conceals and reveals. This creates a sense of mystery and invites speculation, drawing attention to the uncovered features and hinting at a hidden identity or truth. She stepped into heels that added inches to her height and draped a simple shawl over her shoulders. The final touch was a pair of diamond earrings, the only gift from her parents she had brought to the Mu estate, ironically given to her on her 18th birthday, with the comment that even plain girls deserve something beautiful. With everything in place, Nuanuan took one final, evaluating look at herself. The transformation was complete, and yet it wasn't a transformation at all. It was a revelation of what had always existed beneath layers of societal and familial expectation. The woman in the mirror radiated confidence and elegance, her beauty undeniable, not because it was manufactured, but because it was finally unrestrained. As Nuanuan stepped from the car into the night air, her newfound confidence was about to face its ultimate test. Beyond the gilded doors of the Mu Corporation gala lay a battlefield disguised as a ballroom, where worth was measured in seconds, judgments cast in glances, and a woman's value determined before she'd spoken a single word. The mask she wore tonight would reveal more truth than the face she'd hidden all these years. The doorman's eyes widened slightly as he took in her appearance, a reaction that sent a small thrill of validation through her veins. She handed him her invitation with steady fingers, grateful she had thought to secure one through connections she'd cultivated during her university days. The heavy doors swung open, revealing a scene of opulence that momentarily took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, illuminating the city's elite as they circulated through the grand ballroom like planets in a carefully orchestrated solar system. In the center of it all stood towering ice sculptures and cascading champagne fountains, symbols of excess that reflected the Mu Corporation's dominant market position. At the far end of the room, Nuanuan spotted him, Mu Tingqiao, her husband, in name only, surrounded by a small circle of men in identical black suits, his attention fixed on what appeared to be an intense business discussion. She took a deep breath and stepped fully into the light. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations stuttered to a halt as heads turned in her direction. The midnight blue of her gown caught the light, the tiny crystals embedded in the fabric, creating the illusion that she was wrapped in a slice of night sky. Nuanuan felt the weight of their stares, curious, appreciative, assessing, but refused to shrink beneath them. Instead, she moved forward, with measured grace, her posture revealing nothing of the anxiety swirling beneath her composed exterior. A passing waiter offered her champagne, and she accepted with a smile that revealed nothing of her inner turmoil. The cool flute provided an anchor for her trembling fingers as she surveyed the room, searching for familiar faces among the crowd, while hoping none would recognize her. The irony wasn't lost on her. After years of being overlooked, she now feared being truly seen. "I don't believe we've met," came a smooth voice from her left, "and I make it a point to know every beautiful woman in this city." Nuanuan turned to find herself face to face with Shen Chuhan, the charismatic rival whose company had been engaged in a years-long battle with Mu Corporation for market dominance. His reputation preceded him: brilliant, ruthless in business, and notoriously attentive to beautiful women. His eyes, warm and calculating at once, assessed her with unconcealed interest. "Perhaps I'm not from this city," she replied, modulating her voice to a slightly lower register than her normal speaking tone. The slight alteration felt like another layer of her disguise, another barrier between her true self and the role she played tonight. "A mystery woman." Shen Chuhan's smile widened as he moved a step closer. "Those are increasingly rare in our connected world. May I at least know your name?" "The mystery is half the appeal, isn't it?" Nuanuan countered, surprising herself with her boldness. She had rehearsed various scenarios for this evening, but the confidence flowing through her veins now felt authentic rather than practiced. Shen Chuhan laughed, a genuine sound that drew the attention of those nearby. "You're right, of course, though I suspect you're someone worth knowing beyond just your appearance." Their conversation shifted to business matters when he mentioned a recent market disruption. Nuanuan offered an analysis that reflected her education and natural insight, observations that clearly surprised and impressed him. She was careful to speak knowledgeably, but not too specifically, avoiding any details that might link her to her academic background. "You understand markets with remarkable clarity," Shen Chuhan said, his voice taking on a new tone of respect beneath the flirtation. "Are you in finance yourself?" "I observe more than participate," she answered cryptically, allowing a smile to play at the corners of her lips. As they continued talking, Nuanuan became aware of a growing audience. Several board members had drifted into their orbit, drawn by her unexpected insights and Shen Chuhan's obvious interest. She felt a strange power in holding court with these men who would never have given her a second glance, as Nuanuan, the plain wife, kept hidden from society. Her laughter, genuine now as she relaxed into her role, seemed to enchant them further, creating a gravitational pull that continued to draw others near. Across the room, the shift in social dynamics had not gone unnoticed. Mu Tingxiao, typically indifferent to the social aspects of these corporate functions, found his attention repeatedly drawn to the small crowd gathering around a woman in blue. Something about the way she held herself, confident yet restrained, triggered a sense of familiarity he couldn't place. His conversation with the CFO faltered as he watched Shen Chuhan lean in to speak closely to her, a possessive hand coming to rest on her arm. Something dark and unexpected flashed through Mu Tingxiao. The sight of his business rival touching this unknown woman sparked a reaction that caught him entirely off guard. The sensation was foreign, a possessive impulse he had no right to feel toward a stranger. Yet he couldn't tear his eyes away as she tilted her head back in laughter at something Shen Chuhan had said. "Excuse me," he murmured to his colleagues, their surprised expressions barely registering as he moved purposefully across the room. Mu Tingxiao rarely initiated social interaction at these events, preferring to remain in his carefully constructed sphere of business associates. Yet now, he moved with singular focus, weaving through clusters of guests who parted before him like water around a stone. Shen Chuhan noticed his approach first, a flicker of surprise quickly replaced by smug satisfaction crossing his features. "Ah, Tingxiao," he said, his hand still resting on the mysterious woman's arm. "How unlike you to join the social circle." I was just getting acquainted with the most fascinating woman. Nuanuan felt her heart rate accelerate as she sensed a presence behind her. The conversation around her had subtly shifted, voices dropping in deference. She turned slowly, knowing exactly who would be standing there, but unprepared for the impact of meeting his gaze directly. For the first time since their paper marriage began, Nuanuan and Mu Tingxiao looked at each other, without the barriers of ceremony or pretense between them. His eyes, dark, intense, and unexpectedly expressive, searched her face with a concentration that made her breath catch. She saw the moment confusion flickered across his features, the slight narrowing of his eyes, as something about her triggered recognition that he couldn't quite place. "I don't believe we've been introduced," he said, his voice deeper and more intimate than she had ever heard it in their limited interactions at home. There was a question beneath the statement, an uncertainty that seemed completely at odds with the commanding presence he projected to everyone else. "No," Nuanuan replied softly. "I don't believe we have." Something in her eyes, perhaps the quiet defiance that had first caught his attention weeks ago in the garden confrontation, held his gaze longer than social convention dictated. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken recognition that hovered just beyond conscious thought. Shen Chuhan watched this exchange with growing interest, his eyes darting between them as he sensed an undercurrent he couldn't quite identify. "Well, this is unexpected," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I've never seen Mu Tingxiao so interested in making a new acquaintance." "I believe this dance belongs to me," Mu Tingxiao said, his eyes never leaving the woman's partially concealed face. "Perhaps we should remedy that oversight immediately." He stepped forward, with unprecedented intention, oblivious to the fact that the stranger who'd captivated the entire room was actually the same woman whose breakfast table he'd abandoned every morning without a word. The waltz began playing, as tension crystallized in the air between them, a strange gravitational pull that neither could explain nor resist. The traditional ballroom dance, with its inherent power dynamic, seemed fitting for this moment of transformation. Nuanuan hesitated for only a heartbeat before placing her gloved hand in his, electricity arcing between them as his fingers closed around hers with surprising warmth. His grip was firm, but not domineering. Nothing like the cold, distant man who had shared her home, yet remained a stranger. Shen Chuhan watched this exchange with growing interest, his eyes darting between them as he sensed an undercurrent he couldn't quite identify. "Well, this is unexpected," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I've never seen Mu Tingxiao so interested in making a new acquaintance." As Mu Tingxiao guided her away from his business rival, Nuanuan felt the weight of dozens of curious stares, following their progress to the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted instinctively, creating a perfect circle around them as the orchestra struck the first notes of the waltz. His hand settled at the small of her back, the heat of his palm burning through the delicate fabric of her gown. With the slightest pressure, he drew her closer than propriety strictly demanded. The traditional dance positions established an immediate hierarchy between them, his lead, her follow, a physical manifestation of the control he wielded in his corporate empire. Yet as they began to move, something unexpected happened. Rather than feeling diminished by his lead, Nuanuan found herself empowered by it, using the structure of the dance to showcase her own grace and strength. For every step he took forward, she matched with perfect counterbalance, creating harmony where there had only been discord in their paper marriage. "Have we met before?" he asked, his voice pitched low, so only she could hear, the timbre richer and more intimate than any tone he had used during their weeks of cohabitation. His eyes scanned her features with growing intensity, seeking something in the mystery of her partially concealed face. Nuanuan felt a thrill of danger and possibility as she deliberately altered her voice, pitching it slightly lower than her natural speaking tone. "Perhaps in another life, Mr. Mu," she offered, with a mysterious smile that revealed nothing while promising everything. Their bodies moved together with surprising synchronicity, as if they had danced this waltz 100 times before. Each turn, each step flowed naturally from one to the next, creating a visual poetry that drew appreciative murmurs from onlookers. The contradiction wasn't lost on Nuanyuan. How could they move in such perfect harmony when they had barely exchanged 10 words in their daily lives? His hand at her waist tightened slightly as they executed a particularly complex turn, his brow furrowing in concentration. "You know my name," he observed, maintaining the perfect rhythm of their steps. "Yet I find myself at a disadvantage." His eyes never left her face, searching for clues in the exposed portion not covered by her mask. The waltz created an enforced intimacy between them that had never existed in their marriage. The traditional closed position brought her close enough to detect the subtle cologne he wore, to feel the strength in his frame as he guided her through the intricate patterns of the dance. For the first time, Nuanyuan experienced the strange contradiction of feeling both protected and challenged in his presence. As they spun across the polished marble floor, Nuanyuan felt herself becoming intoxicated by this new dynamic between them. The partial disguise had shifted the balance of power, allowing her to experience interaction with her husband without the weight of her family's expectations or his apparent indifference. With each measure of music, she felt her confidence growing, her steps becoming more assured. The cognitive dissonance in Mu Tingxiao's expression was becoming more pronounced. The woman in his arms was simultaneously familiar and unknown. Her movements, the tilt of her head, certain expressions flickered with a strange recognition that he couldn't quite place. The mystery intensified his interest, drawing him closer as he sought to understand the woman behind the mask. The music swelled around them, reaching its emotional peak as Nuanyuan decided to take her greatest risk. Allowing the momentum of their turn to bring her closer still, she leaned near his ear and whispered, "Some might say, you've had the advantage all along." Her words hung suspended between them, pregnant with meaning. His step faltered for the first time, a nearly imperceptible hesitation that no one else would notice, but that told Nuanyuan her barb had found its mark. The implications of her statement, that he had held all the power in their arrangement, that perhaps she wasn't quite the stranger she appeared to be, registered in his eyes as they widened slightly. Something shifted in Mu Tingxiao's expression, a flash of recognition, quickly masked by disbelief, as his mind began to consider what should have been impossible. His gaze intensified, looking past the makeup, past the mask, past the confines of the roles they had established, to consider that this captivating woman who had commanded the attention of the entire room might actually be his supposedly plain, unremarkable wife. The realization didn't fully form, couldn't fully form, because it contradicted everything he thought he knew. Instead, it hovered at the edges of his awareness, an impossible possibility that both attracted and unsettled him. His grip on her waist tightened further, not in anger, but in an unconscious attempt to prevent her from slipping away before he could solve the puzzle she presented. As the final notes of the waltz resonated through the ballroom, Nuanyuan executed a perfect step back, breaking their connection with choreographed precision. The loss of contact between them felt more significant than it should have, leaving an emptiness that surprised them both. She lowered herself into a flawless curtsy, the movement practiced yet natural, her eyes never leaving his as she completed the traditional closing of their dance. "Thank you for the dance, Mr. Mu," she said, her altered voice carrying just enough warmth to be polite, but not enough to invite further interaction. Before he could respond, before he could reach for her or question her further, she rose from her curtsy and turned away, disappearing into the crowd with deliberate grace that made pursuit difficult without causing a scene. Mu Tingxiao remained rooted in place at the center of the dance floor, his usual composed demeanor fractured by confusion and intrigue. For perhaps the first time in his adult life, he found himself at a disadvantage, uncertain of the proper move, unsure of what had just transpired. The woman in blue had unsettled him in ways no business rival ever had, leaving him with questions that demanded answers. For a man who prided himself on never being caught off guard, Mu Tingxiao moved with unusual urgency through the crowded ballroom. The mysterious woman in blue had slipped away immediately after their dance, leaving him with more questions than answers and an unfamiliar sensation he couldn't quite name. His eyes tracked the shimmer of midnight fabric disappearing through the French doors leading to the balcony. Without a second thought, he abandoned his usual aloofness, cutting through conversations and ignoring business associates who attempted to intercept him. The night air carried a slight chill as he stepped onto the balcony, finding her silhouetted against the twinkling city lights spread below like scattered diamonds. Her back was to him, shoulders straight with a quiet dignity he found strangely familiar. She must have sensed his presence because she turned slowly, the moonlight catching half her face, while the ornate mask continued to shield the truth from him. "You followed me," she observed, her voice carrying a hint of satisfaction that suggested this was precisely what she had hoped would happen. "Who are you really?" Mu Tingxiao demanded, his usual calculated composure fractured by an intensity that surprised even him. Something about this woman had bypassed all his carefully constructed defenses, awakening feelings he hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. Instead of answering directly, she tilted her head slightly, studying him with eyes that seemed to see straight through his practiced exterior. "Does it matter? You seemed uninterested in bringing your wife tonight. Perhaps you prefer the company of strangers." The direct mention of his wife sent an unexpected jolt through him. Mu Tingxiao stiffened, his eyes narrowing as he studied her more carefully. The impossible truth began forming in his mind, a recognition his logical brain initially rejected as absurd. Yet the pieces were aligning with an unavoidable clarity. Her knowledge of him, the familiar defiance in her stance, the way she had anticipated and countered his movements during their dance, as if they were extensions of each other. "How do you know about my wife?" he asked, his voice dropping lower as he stepped closer, purposefully invading her personal space in a way he never had during their weeks of sharing a home, but not a life. "Perhaps I know more than you realize," she replied, refusing to retreat despite his proximity. Her eyes held his without wavering, a direct gaze that defied everything he supposedly demanded of those around him. The moonlight shifted across her features as clouds passed overhead, illuminating different angles of what little of her face remained visible. Each new glimpse added to his growing suspicion. Impossible as it seemed, the mysterious beauty who had commanded the attention of the entire room, who had engaged Shen Chuhan in conversation as an equal, who had moved in his arms with natural grace, could she possibly be the same woman he had dismissed as ordinary and unremarkable? "Remove your mask," he commanded softly, the request carrying the weight of a man accustomed to being obeyed, yet tinged with something new, a vulnerability, perhaps even a plea. For a moment she didn't move, and Mu Tingxiao found himself holding his breath, waiting for her response with an anticipation he hadn't felt since childhood. Finally, she raised her hands to the delicate ribbon securing her mask, her movements deliberate and unhurried. Nuanuan's heart pounded against her ribs as her fingers found the satin ribbon. This moment would irreversibly alter the foundation of their paper marriage. There would be no returning to the invisible, dismissed wife once her transformation was revealed. No more hiding in the shadows of her own home. No more being overlooked and underestimated. Whatever came next, rejection, anger, or something else entirely, she would face it standing tall, finally seen for who she truly was. With steady hands that belied her inner turmoil, she slowly united the ribbon, allowing the mask to fall away. The protective barrier between them dropped to the stone balcony floor with a soft sound that seemed to echo in the charged silence. Moonlight now fully illuminated her features, transformed by skillful makeup and newfound confidence, but unmistakably Nuanuan. The woman Mu Tingxiao had married, yet never truly seen, stood before him, revealed not just physically, but in the strength of character that had drawn him to her across the crowded ballroom. Mu Tingxiao's expression transformed through a series of emotions: initial disbelief, dawning recognition, and finally something unreadable that might have been admiration, or perhaps regret. For a man whose face rarely revealed his thoughts, this cascade of reactions spoke volumes. "It was you all along," he whispered, the realization that he had been captivated by his own wife, creating a seismic shift in his perception. All evening, he had been drawn to a woman he thought was a stranger, only to discover she had been living under his roof For weeks, Nuanuan remained silent, allowing the impact of her revelation to fully register. The cognitive dissonance was evident in his expression as he struggled to reconcile the plain, unremarkable wife he'd barely acknowledged with the confident, captivating woman who had commanded the attention of everyone in the ballroom, including him. "Why?" he finally asked, the single word containing multiple questions. Why the disguise? Why reveal herself now? Why had he never seen what was so clearly before him? "Because you never looked," Nuanuan answered simply, addressing the unspoken question with an honesty that cut through pretense. "From the moment our marriage was arranged, you decided who I was, without ever discovering who I might be." Her words struck with precision, exposing a truth Mu Tingxiao couldn't deny. He had accepted the narrative presented to him of a plain, forgettable woman sacrificed for family connections, without ever questioning its validity. He had participated in her invisibility, reinforcing the boundaries that kept her at a distance. "The woman who danced with me tonight," he began, his eyes never leaving her face as he processed this revelation. "Who held her own with Shen Chuhan, who commanded the attention of every person in that room. She was always there." "Always," Nuanuan confirmed, a hint of sadness mingling with pride in her voice. "But no one expected to see her, so no one did. Not my family, not yours, and certainly not you." The recognition scene unfolding between them held more emotional weight than their entire wedding ceremony. Here, finally, was the true unveiling, not just of Nuanuan's beauty, but of the assumptions and limitations that had defined their relationship until this moment. "I should have looked closer," Mu Tingxiao acknowledged, surprising her with his candor. For a man notorious for never admitting fault, this concession represented a significant departure from character. A brief silence settled between them, filled with the distant sounds of the gala continuing without them, and the soft rustle of her gown as she shifted slightly. The power dynamics between them had fundamentally shifted. No longer was she the grateful bride rescued from obscurity, nor he the distant benefactor offering security through marriage. "What happens now?" Nuanuan asked, the question floating between them like the mask at their feet, a reminder of identities discarded and new possibilities emerging. Mu Tingxiao studied her for a long moment before extending his hand, much as he had on the dance floor. This time, however, the gesture carried different meaning, not an assertion of ownership or social obligation, but an invitation. "Now," he said, his voice carrying a warmth she had never heard from him before, "I believe we should return to our guests, Mrs. Mu. Together." The word "together" hung between them like a promise neither had anticipated making when the evening began. What happens when a woman who has been invisible her entire life suddenly becomes the only person a powerful man can see? They stepped back into the glittering ballroom as strangers to each other, strangers who now shared not just a name, but a secret understanding. The moment they crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations stuttered to a halt as heads turned toward the striking couple. Mu Tingxiao's hand rested at the small of Nuanuan's back, with a possessiveness that hadn't existed hours earlier, guiding her through the crowd that parted before them like water. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Zhang Nuanuan," Mu Tingxiao announced, his voice carrying across the sudden hush that had fallen over the nearest guests. The words hung in the air, shocking those who had spent weeks speculating about the mysterious woman he had married, yet never brought into society. The ripple effect was immediate. Whispers erupted throughout the ballroom, racing from one corner to another as the information spread. Women who had dismissed the rumors of Mu Tingxiao's marriage as temporary arrangements stared with poorly concealed disbelief. Business associates who had never questioned his perpetual solitude at corporate functions exchanged meaningful glances. The ugly bride, they had all imagined based on gossip and speculation, stood before them, radiant and composed. Shen Chuhan approached them with the confidence of a man who believed he still held cards worth playing. His smile carried a knowing edge as he stopped before them, champagne glass tilted slightly in Nuanuan's direction. "So the mysterious beauty belongs to you after all, Tingxiao," he remarked, his tone deliberately provocative. "How interesting that no one has met her until tonight." Nuanuan felt Mu Tingxiao tense beside her, the slight pressure of his fingers increasing against her back. The accusation beneath Shen Chuhan's words was clear, that Mu Tingxiao had been embarrassed by his wife, keeping her hidden away until she became presentable enough for his world. Before her husband could respond, Nuanuan stepped forward slightly, her newfound confidence carrying her voice across the small circle that had formed around them. "Perhaps some treasures are worth keeping private until they're properly appreciated," she said, her tone light, but her meaning unmistakable. The implication landed precisely as she intended. She was not a secret kept out of shame, but a valuable possession Mu Tingxiao had wisely kept to himself. Her response silenced the room. Several women exchanged glances, reassessing the woman before them who had so effortlessly claimed her place beside one of the most eligible bachelors in their circle, a man who, it seemed, was no longer a bachelor at all. Shen Chuhan's smile faltered for just a moment before he regained his composure, inclining his head in acknowledgement of a well-placed counter. "Touché, Mrs. Mu," he conceded, retreating with as much dignity as possible. As they navigated through the remainder of the evening, Mu Tingxiao remained constantly at Nuanuan's side, a marked departure from his usual pattern of minimal social engagement at such functions. His eyes frequently returned to her face with a mixture of fascination and something that looked remarkably like pride. When required to separate briefly for business conversations, his gaze would find her across the room, tracking her movements as though afraid she might disappear. During a momentary lull, Nuanuan caught sight of her in-laws standing near the entrance. Their expressions registered shock, followed quickly by calculation as they watched their son, known for his aloofness, attentively pour a glass of champagne for his wife. The woman who had been whispered about as a business arrangement, a necessary compromise, now commanded the attention of the room, and more importantly, their son. The evening reached its crescendo when the doors opened to admit late arrivals, among them Nuanuan's sister, Wangqi, entering on the arm of her fiancé from the prestigious Chen family. Wangqi faltered mid-step when her eyes landed on Nuanuan, recognition dawning with horrified clarity. The sister she had always dismissed, the plain girl who had been sacrificed to protect her own engagement, now stood confidently beside one of the most powerful men in the room, wearing an expression of serene self-possession. Their eyes met across the crowded space. For the first time in their shared history, it was Wangqi who looked away first. The encounter left Nuanuan with an unexpected feeling. Not triumph or vindication as she might have anticipated, but a quiet sense of liberation. The opinion of the sister who had overshadowed her entire life suddenly seemed irrelevant, a concern belonging to a different version of herself who no longer existed. As the orchestra played the final set of the evening, Mu Tingxiao leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "We have much to discuss when we return home," he whispered, his tone suggesting that their paper marriage might finally become something real. The formality that had characterized their interactions for weeks had dissolved, replaced by something tentative yet promising. Nuanuan nodded, suddenly aware that this night marked not just her transformation in the eyes of society, but potentially the beginning of a genuine relationship with the man she had married in name only. When they finally departed, the night air felt crisp with possibility. The car waited for them at the entrance, the driver holding the door with newfound deference. Inside the privacy of the vehicle, silence fell between them, not the uncomfortable void of their previous interactions, but a space filled with unspoken questions waiting to be addressed. Mu Tingxiao watched her profile as the city lights illuminated her face intermittently through the window. Finally, he broke the silence with the question that seemed to weigh most heavily on his mind. "Why did you hide yourself from me?" The question contained layers of meaning beyond the superficial inquiry about her appearance. Nuanuan turned to face him fully, her eyes meeting his with the directness that had first caught his attention in the garden confrontation with his brother. "I was never hiding," she replied with quiet dignity. "You simply never looked." Her response hit its mark. Mu Tingxiao's expression shifted as he absorbed the simple truth of her words. For weeks, he had lived alongside a woman he had never truly seen, accepting the narrative others had constructed about her, without bothering to verify it himself. The revelation seemed to humble him in a way business challenges never had. "You're right," he acknowledged after a moment, the admission clearly difficult for a man unaccustomed to recognizing his own oversights. "I didn't look, but I'm looking now." The car ride home provided a moment of reflection for Nuanwan, where she realized that her transformation had altered more than just her appearance. It had shifted the balance of power in her marriage and changed how she viewed herself. This exchange highlighted the importance of being truly seen and understood, setting the stage for a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine connection. This moment was a turning point, as Nuanuan asserted her agency and challenged Mu Tingxiao's previous perceptions. As the car pulled into the Mu estate, Nuanuan understood that her journey represented something far deeper than a physical transformation. Her defiance against being rendered invisible had become an act of self-liberation. By embracing her authentic self, she had broken free from the constraints that both her family and society had imposed upon her. For Mu Tingxiao, watching his wife step from the shadows had forced him to confront his own biases. He had been looking without truly seeing, judging value through the distorted lens of rumors and expectations rather than personal connection. Their eyes met across the console, two people finally seeing each other clearly, their true selves revealed beneath fallen masks.